This is definitely my most ridiculous hotel room setup for Q&A in history. You guys need to see this. I'm gonna show you on the GoPro. Behind the scenes. But when you're a travel photographer, you just have to make do with the situation you have. You have to make your own studio. And my studio right now is the messiest hotel room in the history of my hotel rooms. I have no idea how Jody hasn't yet left me for a photographer that's more successful and cleaner, most importantly. This is bad. Okay, let's get into this. It's Q&A time. Every single time this channel reaches a bit of a milestone, I'd like to do a Q&A. And that's kind of been the tradition. And today, if everything goes right, we'll hit 5 million views on this channel, which is just crazy. That's like the population of a small country. It's probably more people than the country of Djibouti, which is simultaneously my favorite country name in the whole wide world. Anyways, to talk about the next milestone before the Q&A is the 50K milestone. Is that this channel should hit 50,000 subscribers in less than a month. And the whole goal is to try to make that 50K simultaneous with that massive meetup I'm doing across the US. So if you haven't been sharing the channel, I would love for you guys to share the channel, share videos. Oh no, they've decided to do construction in the middle of the Q&A. Hopefully that doesn't last. If you haven't been sharing, please share the channel. That way we'll reach 50K by the time we do that massive US road trip meetup, that really fun adventure. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you can see it in a future video or a past video, or I can mention it right now. Right now. Okay, that's what I'll do. I've just had coffee, if you haven't noticed. The meetup idea is February 10th. I'm going to start in New York City. Brooklyn Bridge Park for sunset, to be more specific. And by the 14th of February, I want to be in Santa Monica here back in LA for sunrise. And in that span, I want to do 10 shoots and 10 meetups across the US, and it's going to be epic and crazy. And I want that kind of be like the 50K celebration video. So I would love your help in pushing this channel to 50K over the next couple weeks to make that happen. Now, let's get into the Q&A. I've been yapping too long. I also need to say, sorry I don't use a lav mic. When you're talking photography gear as a travel photographer, quite often it's about making sacrifices. What can you pack? What should I pack? And what can I leave behind? And I chose to leave behind a lav mic and not pack one, and I regret it. Because these talking videos are obviously way better with a lav mic. That way, even if they do construction, you don't hear it. So I'm sorry that there's no lav mic. I realize that's a fault on my part, and I bought one on Amazon. And in future Q&As and talking videos, there will be a lav mic. Now, this is about travel photography gear. And I threw it out there on my Facebook group to send me questions about photography gear. And there was lots of questions about vlogging gear. This isn't about vlogging gear. This video is going to be entirely about travel photography, about still images. So if I skip your vlogging question, I guess maybe we'll get it when we hit 60K or 10 million views or something exciting like that. I've got all the questions over here on the side. And before I get into any of the questions, I need to say that there was 1,000 questions about what camera do you use? What lens is your favorite? What do you use? I'm just gonna lay out my gear really quickly for travel photography before that. So this is what's in my bag for travel photography. This is it. Everything that I shoot pictures on, minus the tripod that you're seeing back there, is right here. And to make things easier, I'm actually gonna do a blog post. There'll be a link to the blog post in the description of this video where you can see all the gear that I use laid out really efficiently, so to make things easier. But I'll get to it quick. This is a 5D Mark IV camera body. I love it. I got it about a month ago and I love it. There's nothing else I can say about it. There's a couple of videos on this channel the past month about me using it for the first time and testing out some of the features, and just love it. I think it's the perfect travel photography camera, especially for a vlogger, because the video functions have been really good. On it is my favorite lens, my 16 to 35 millimeter f4. I love that lens, and maybe I'll talk about that lens a little bit later on as well. The second most used lens in my bag is my 70 to 200 f2.8 IS. This is version 1 and it's 100 million years old. I love this lens as well. I have a 50 millimeter f1.4. I hate this lens. I hate this lens more than I hate most things. I don't use the word hate very often. I hate this lens. Focus is slow. It just doesn't seem super sharp. I hate this lens. But Canon hasn't come out with like an alternative f1.4 lens. The 1.2 is too expensive. The 1.8 doesn't have things I need, like a marking of the infinity point, which seems useless to people a lot of time, but if you're shooting a lot of stars, it's really helpful. So I hate that lens. I'm over it. 14mm Rokinon f2.8. I love that lens. I love it for stars. It's so cool. And it's manual aperture, manual focus, so I really only use it for stars and sometimes for vlogging, but love that lens. GoPro. Don't discount GoPro. I know a photographer who has like 100,000 followers on Instagram who got his start just by taking GoPro photos. And they weren't like selfies, they were like long exposure photos. There were lots of really cool shots. So don't discount the GoPro. I have the GoPro Hero 5. The Mavic Pro. I have a love-hate relationship with all drones. They do incredible things, but mine always seem to be breaking down on me some way, shape, or form. So I love that for taking stills, and it's something I need to do more often, is take more stills on my Mavic. And a GorillaPod. I think that a GorillaPod is the most underrated piece of kit in travel photography. How many times have you rocked up to a location and there's a fence in the way? And you can't get your tripod close enough. The GorillaPod hangs on the top of the fence and shoots right over it. I think it's such an underrated piece of kit. Just don't cheap out on them, buy the good ones. And finally, not seen in the picture, is my Winston tripod, which you're maybe familiar with from the video of when I went to pick it up. And if you're not, there's probably a card around here somewhere for you to check it out. Winston is a beast of a tripod. I bash my tripods to bit, and it hasn't let me down. I love it, absolutely love it. So that's my photography kit. Now I haven't planned the rest of the video out. I'm literally just gonna go to my computer here and check the questions and answer them. Daniel Vester asks, what's the best wide angle lens for a Canon crop sensor? In my humble opinion, that's the Sigma 10 to 20mm. I think it's a really sharp lens. I think it's sharp all the way to the corners, which is rare for a wide angle on a crop sensor. I think that's probably your best bet. Skylar Allen asks, I got back from Norway and kind of hated cramming my camera gear into and out of my dedicated hiking bag. What would you recommend? A solution. I saw when I was hiking with Thomas Heaton, I saw that he had like an insert that he stuffed in the bottom of his bag, and then he pulled it out when he got to location. And that's cool if you're only planning on shooting photos at your location. But the problem is, when you're hiking, sometimes you see the coolest photos on the walk rather than at your destination. So it's really important to find a bag that has a separate camera compartment that you can access without going through the top. One bag by F-Stop that does it pretty well, although it's not big enough. My bag, which isn't here, inconveniently it's out in the vehicle, is Nanu Outlander. I've had it for 7 years, I think, and I'm not even sure the company exists. But if it does, you should check it out. What it is it's a hiking bag that's really comfortable. It just looks exactly like any sort of hiking backpack, but then there's a side compartment in the bottom so you can get your gear out by just flipping your bag sideways and opening the side compartment. So try to find a dedicated camera hiking bag. There's not a lot of them, but if you can find a good one, they're lifesavers. The beauty of my bag, the Nanu, is I can also take out the camera insert and just use it as a hiking bag if I don't want to take my camera, which is pretty unlikely, but it could happen, I guess. What brand of filters do I use? And I just realized they're not up here. Be right back. I suppose these should have also been in my intro as well. I use the Lee filters, and the reason I use Lee filters is it just seems like they're the best quality and the easiest to find. I use the square filters, so you'll see on each of my cameras there's an adapter ring, and then this thing slides onto it. This is the holder, and then you can fit 2 or 3 if you have the extra attachment or a polarizer onto it, and these just slide in. And the beauty of these, rather than like the circular ones, is one, you get less vignetting on them, but mainly it's cheaper in the long run because you just get an adapter for all your different lenses, and you don't need a different filter if all your adapter rings are different on your camera. So I use the square filters. I use Lee filters out of ease. The Format high-tech filters that are in their Firecrest line are unreal. They're the cleanest filters I've ever seen. But I have a problem with their customer service. I've had a couple issues with them, and they just weren't reliable, so I never ended up using them in the long run. But Lee filters are definitely worth the investment. Just protect them. Next question comes from Ben Esch, my dude that brought me, oh, not this hat, but a different hat. Ben Esch Ben Eshelman asks, if you had to buy a set of grad filters that aren't Lee, what would you buy for your first set? I had some cheap ones on a Koken system that were actually Format High-Tech grad filters, and they were way cheaper, and they were good, but the filter holder kind of sucked. But if you just need a grad, you don't need an ND filter, that's a good option and a cheap solution. Back when I was starting my photography, I didn't have a lot of money. I mean, I still don't have a lot of money, but I had to make sacrifices in gear, and that's what I did. The downside is always the color cast on the grad filters. If you buy cheap filters, you tend to get weird color cast, and sometimes it's hard to correct, but you usually can correct it. You could even just like chuck a piece of welding glass in front of your camera, although it's probably going to turn out purple. Again, you can color correct it later. So there's always a solution for a budget, I think, with travel photography. Best cold weather photography gloves. Again, they're not up here, but I'll show you. I've been getting a lot of questions about these gloves. These are Valorette gloves, and they're photography specific gloves from a company that, full disclosure, gave me these gloves to test out and see if I would like them. Tested them out in Iceland. They're amazing. They've got like this sticky grip on your hand that even when it gets wet, it doesn't get slippery. So if it's cold weather, you can like grip your camera like that. I'm hardly touching it with my hand. It's just super, super grippy, and it's got these pull-out fingertip things that if you need to manipulate the camera, you can just do that. They're super awesome. These are kind of like the lighter weight ones. They also make like a really heavy winter one as well. So full disclosure, they gave me those gloves for free. They're not paying for this advertisement. I just love them and think you guys should check them out. Again, they'll be listed in that blog post that's in the description. Next question. Do you use a UV filter lens protector or nah? Nah. That's just a short answer. I think that lenses are strong enough these days, have nice enough coating that you don't need a UV filter. The less glass you can put in front of your camera is generally better. The UV filters, especially if there's like light coming in at an angle, can create lens flare and stuff like that, so nah. Would I recommend a three-legged thing over a Gitzo or Really Right Stuff for travel? That's a really, really hard one, and it's all about your income. And I guess how much you're willing to lug around. The Gitzo and Really Right Stuff tripods are higher quality. There's no way around that. They're just insanely high quality tripods. Especially the Really Right Stuff heads are unreal. They're so good and so high quality, but for travel. They're heavy, they're big, and maybe a little bit overkill for most things. I really like the three-legged thing travel tripods because they're compact and you can stuff them away. The Leo is just tiny, and Albert is a really good tripod that you can pack away really tight. And even Winston, which is the massive one that I use, isn't huge and it isn't really heavy. When we did our meetup in Phoenix, some of the guys had some Benro tripods and some of the other really serious tripods, and they were just beastly heavy. And for travel, it can be a little bit cumbersome, especially if you do a lot of hiking. So I guess it depends on the person and the type of travel you do. If you do any hiking, I would just say get a three-legged thing. If you're doing most of your shooting directly out of the car, and you can afford it, maybe a Gitzo or Really Right Stuff. I love this question from Mark Woodward. If aliens stole all your Canon equipment on Earth, what manufacturer system would you choose? I think I would choose Sony. I think I would just, I would reset and shoot Sony gear. The thing that's always stressed me out about Sony is Sony lenses. They're more expensive and the line isn't as big. But I think I would switch to Sony in its current state. I still have faith in Canon that in a year from now, we're gonna get that really cool mirrorless that I'm able to stick EF lenses on. So I'm holding out hope for Canon, but if the aliens stole my gear, I'd buy some Sony stuff, I think. What's the first piece of gear you would leave behind when you're thinking of packing light and going hiking? When I'm hiking, I always say I'm gonna leave certain things behind and I take everything. I think the one piece I leave behind is the 50mm because I hate it. But I always sacrifice food, clothing, and proper shoes for camera gear. So I don't think I leave anything behind. I think the trick is to have a set of camera gear that's versatile and doesn't weigh a lot. This set right here is what I take camping along with the tripod, and it doesn't really weigh that much. So, I mean, worst case scenario, you get a little extra exercise with the heavy bag. What do I think of the Mavic Air by DJI? From first sight, I love it. From first sight, I almost wish I would have been able to wait and not get the Mavic. From first sight, no use and not seeing that many reviews, I think it's the future. I think it looks incredible. And if I didn't have a brand new Mavic, I would probably get the Air. That's what I think of it. And I think that for $799, it's It's like an incredible piece of work. So yeah, love the Mavic Air. I probably will get one. But now I say this, and by the time I need one, which will be a year from now, they'll probably come up with something better. Alistair Beavis asks, and I'm going to paraphrase this question, if you're traveling so much, why are you traveling with the 70-200 f2.8 IS Beast? And that's a very, very good question. I bought this lens 5 years ago, or even 6 years ago, on my way to Africa, and I wanted to use it, and I did use it to shoot portraits and wildlife and stuff like that. And nowadays, I still use f2.8 quite a bit for things that you might not see on the camera, and to shoot video with and stuff like that. So I don't know if I need f2.8. I don't know if I need the IS, but I like that I have it. And the little bit of extra weight isn't that cumbersome to me. That being said, if you're a landscape photographer, there's no need for you to get the 2.8 version of this. There's no need to get the IS version. You can get that lens that's like $600, $700. That's the f4 non-IS 70-200, which is still just a stellar lens. I think that's it for questions. I know this was a really, really long Q&A, but I think that sometimes you just got to throw in everything, all the information, so that when people ask you incessantly in the comments a question, you can just link to the video rather than respond, which I know is lazy, but let's be honest, I'm a little bit lazy. Now, if there's any questions photography related that I didn't answer that you're thinking of, shoot them in the comments and I'll try to answer as many as I possibly can. And yeah, that's it for today. Coming up on the channel, we're finishing this road trip down the Pacific Coast Highway on our way to Pismo Beach, which should be absolutely incredible. And I guess I'll see you guys on that episode. Peace.